What do you want to talk about?
I want to talk about, God, I want to talk about so much stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm kind of happy I'm speaking to you about it.
Mm-hmm.
So, you grew up in Bed-Stuy,
Yes.
right? So, first, this is my good friend. I feel like you're like my little brother, Rondell, who I'm so protective over. And
I'll take that.
I
I
do, I
love it.
just love you, right? And so, the first time I met you, I was like, who is this black man who is just looking at us? Like, quiet, not saying much, but definitely observant. And as we got to know you, what is your story? Like, how do you maneuver through these streets with this almost glow about you that is protective but yet welcoming at the same time? Where did that come from?
Um, I think I'm still trying to figure that all out.
Hmm.
I wasn't as quiet growing up. I was pretty outgoing for a long period of time. I was in my early years. I had some class clown. I had a class clown phase.
Did you know?
Yeah, I had a outburst, kind of maybe I would say seeking attention or needing to be or feeling like I need to be the center of attention for some time. And that's then I've transformed into this kind of will stand in the back of the room and observe and watch and be wary of energy.
Ah,
Interestingly enough, I think that came after this kind of dark spell I had, and maybe we could talk about that. But I think that's one of the traits I kept after kind of climbing out of a short period of depression I had some years ago.
mm-hmm.
Um,
I mean, it's interesting that you said dark spell and you also said depression, right?
mhm.
But the climbing out of it. We live in a time that everyone speaks about triggers and trauma and how they're either dealing with it or not dealing with it. But so I'm 50, yay, right? And I think in the time period of my life, what I've experienced is that you always will have these moments where you have to go into valleys and then you get to go up to mountains, right? Sometimes people look at the valleys as if it's the dark space or it's the depression space, but I think that's where a lot of the work gets done when you're really starting to feel like, why do I feel like this? How am I even going to stop feeling this? I mean, I need to examine what's happening. So when you examined yourself, what did you see?
Um, I saw, I watched myself go from like being lost and questioning every aspect of life,
Yeah. Mhm.
questioning at the time what I thought was the definition of a man and my worthiness. At the time, relationship with God and my spirituality and just my place on earth.
Mhm.
Uh, I think I had a a feeling that if you're a good person and you work hard and you do right by people, good things should happen to you.
It should.
Then it was like
But that's not how it
no.
happened. That doesn't always happen.
And it was like no, not even if you do things for what you think is the right reason.
Mhm.
Will people or will opportunities sway your way? So that was a really tough spot. Um, but I also observed unfortunately, how much resilience I held and how
Mhm.
much perseverance I had and my ability to not sink deep to some bad thoughts I probably had at the time or some bad decisions I could have made at the time.
Mhm.
And I don't necessarily think uh, I'm better because I didn't make worse decisions as far as what happens when people are desperate and without money and without space and opportunities.
Come on,
I
talk
don't
about it.
I don't know what the reason was.
Mhm.
I don't know. I don't know if it was God. I don't know if I have this special ability, but there was definitely some moments where I was considering. I was broke for as an adult. I was broke for a few years, and many times people in need of desperation
Right.
would do crimes, would
Mhm.
do or resort to substance abuse, become violent, bitter, angry, and just fortunately, I can't tell you how or why. I haven't discovered that. I don't know what made me special or less likely to succumb to those
I'll say blessed.
things. I'll take blessed.
I'll say blessed. Yeah.
I'll take blessed. Um, yeah, I just appreciate that. Appreciate that about myself, about my body,
Mhm.
about keeping it together. Because
Mhm.
my diet wasn't great,
Mhm.
my sleeping wasn't great.
Mhm.
Um, Worse things didn't happen in a time where I really, like, I needed lots of help, and
Right.
I also wasn't the type to go ask for help.
That part.
I didn't want to put my mother in a position and like, hey, you did what you had to do to raise me
Yeah.
and my siblings for a long time, but hey, now I'm a grown person, I still need your help.
But here's the thing, right? And so I've given birth to 5 children. In our family, there's 8 children. It's a huge blended family. The youngest person in the family is 15, and so everyone is either somewhere in their 20s or in their 30s. And we had children. My partner and I starting. I think he started having children at 19, and I started having children at 21. Which meant that we didn't know what the heck we were doing, right? And we needed help. And that thought process of I don't want to burden my family or my mother or my father with the asking of help, I think is one of the reasons why we were individually just swirling around in an abyss of like unknownness, right? And so back in the day, community was based on, or family community was based on a grandmother, grandfather, aunts and uncles. You know, we're all around and everybody was in everybody's business.
Mm-hmm.
Somewhere along the path, we decided that no one should know what I'm doing. I'm an individual. I don't want to be, burdensome, what have you. But it meant that you were now isolated from the actual help, right? From community, from the spiritual groundation that someone else got because they went through some things
Mm-hmm.
and they learned some stuff from the things that they went through. And then you could glean from it. But somehow we've gotten this thought process that mm, maybe I'm not worthy of your time. I don't want to bother you.
Yeah.
All right. And I think for me, and I don't know if this is what you can say, when you decided to ask for help, whether it's from God, whether it's from your mother, whether it's from, whoever, and then accepting or receiving, there was a different light that happened in my life. Did you find that for yourself?
I mean, honestly, I never. At that time, I still hadn't learned to ask
Mm.
for help. It,
Mhm.
I probably would have gotten out of that hole a bit sooner.
Mhm.
Probably would have learned a lot more, been a lot healthier at the time. But at a point in time, I bring up my mother as often as I can. I just watched her work and work and work and work and
Yeah.
work. So that's a trait I picked up from her, which is
Right.
not the healthiest trait to constantly be moving, to constantly work. But she got kids and she got bills,
She
and
gotta do what she gotta do.
the only other option is to end up on the street, and she's not going to do that.
Right.
So I had picked up that trait for her for a long time, and I still have it, but there's rest now and there's recuperation, and so I had at a point in time while I was still very sad, I had decided in my mind that we're gonna work. We're gonna do 2 or 3 jobs. I'm gonna be eating rice. My meal at the time was rice, butter, and ketchup.
Come on now. That's gourmet. You had ketchup
I had ketchup, but
and
ketchup
butter.
you get a big blue bottle of ketchup for like 2 big bottles for $10.
Mm-hmm.
But it's terrible for the body.
Oh,
It's
of
terrible for
course.
the mind and the spirit. And
Mm-hmm.
um, I had I had went to the doctor. He told me I was pre-diabetic, and I was like, "Look at me, like, what are you talking
How?
about?" And he's like, "Yeah, you're pre-diabetic." And my grandmother suffered from
Mm-hmm.
diabetes at a young age for a long time, and she ultimately succumbed to what came with that. But I didn't. I did it, and I wouldn't suggest that of people, even if it has worked out for me at least up until this point. I wouldn't suggest that of people. And I had people in my corner who would have helped,
Mm-hmm.
who wouldn't have been ashamed of me for asking for
At
help.
all,
But it's just I don't know. Culturally, it's just something about
because you're a man.
buttering other people.
Also,
Yeah,
you're a man. Like men are supposed to handle things. You're supposed to stand
yeah.
up, hold
Or at
space.
least that's what.
Oh, it's a
At,
whole lie.
right, right.
It's a whole
That's
lie.
that's the kind of conditions of being a man. You're not a
Mm-hmm.
man if you have to
Right.
depend on other people. If you can't pay the bills, provide and protect,
Right.
um, which is toxic in its own way because that means at all costs, I would have to, even if it's at to the fault of my own body, my own spirit, the people that love me. As long as I protect and provide for them, then that's I'm
Right.
doing my duties as a man,
It's
which is not the
completely,
case.
yeah, not at
No.
all. So my family is from South America, my mother and my father. And um, my dad passed away probably the same year that we opened up. So it's been about 5 years now.
Mm.
And I hadn't really had a close relationship with him in our latter, like I'd say maybe for 10 years, really. Um, he was, his spirit is amazing. He's always with me. But his physical choices while he was here in this world, I didn't really understand and I kind of resented. There was, he was like a magical, humorous style icon, just everyone knew him, but he also had an ridiculous temper
Mm.
that, he could go from 0 to 100, so you never knew what you were going to get. And then there was also the drug use, right? And so when weed was just weed, it's like, okay, but then it was weed and it was crack and it was cocaine and it was all these things. And
Mm-hmm.
my family experienced those things. And so I was very resentful for a long time that I felt like my dad didn't fight for me. Like he didn't fight for his life to be with me, right? And it's after he died, right? I was at his funeral and he comes from a very big family, right? And so there was like this shame that daddy was like the black sheep of the family and he never
Mm-hmm.
got any, he was always doing something crazy and they didn't like him. And at his funeral I realized, oh my god, you're the favorite. You're actually the
Mm.
favorite of this family, and we we got it all wrong, right? There was a lot of trauma that he was dealing with just as a black man, a black immigrant man coming to this country. um he got into like the union and he was like the only black man in there, so it was just like all this strife and crazy that was coming home with him that we didn't understand because we weren't out there in the world with him. And so he found coping mechanisms that weren't necessarily the best
Mm-hmm.
to be able to function within this world. And so it made me think now, like, what are better coping mechanisms? Because racism is going to be here, classism is going to be here, all the things, it's going to be here. But what do we do to make sure that we're able to stand? I know as a black woman, some of the things that I do, it's centered around constantly telling myself, you're good. Like you don't have to prove anything to anyone. You're good. But for a black man, like what are your coping mechanisms to kind of help you navigate through this process?
Well, thank you for sharing that one and asking that question because I think it's a great question. I want to don't let me forget that question, but I want to share like the experiences with my father as well, which
Absolutely.
ironically but not surprisingly sounds pretty similar
Mm-hmm.
to yours. And I'm 31. My father passed when I was 9 years old.
Hmm.
Um, but certain qualities about me, my mother would tell me, "You just like your father." So I
Yeah.
love old school music. I
Mm-hmm.
love uh, two stepping, right, swaying the music, dancing. I love the oldies.
Yeah.
So when I sing that with her, or when I try to dance with her, she said, "You're just like your father."
Oh man.
And I don't have those memories of him, but somehow that quality has stuck with me. But my father was also, as I remember, um, he could light up a room as well. He had a big smile,
Mm-hmm.
little big teeth, big
Mm-hmm.
ears. Uh, can also light up a room, but also from a young age was sick.
Mm.
He had a condition in which he needed constant medical attention, or at least monthly medical attention. Um, and his substance of choice was also alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember, even from a young age, that people have when alcohol seeps through their pores, they always smell like
Right.
alcohol. So he was that. And I remember the smell. I remember he loved Budweiser. I remember the big white and red
Yes,
cans,
sir.
and he would have another cousin of mine over. They would drink. He would usually call me into the living room, take his glass to the kitchen.
Of course.
It was always like a little bit of beer left. I used to drink it.
Of course we did.
But
Ours was Valentine Ale, and it was just like,
it was just like a little bit left, and I don't know, I don't know if he did it on purpose, cause my father was like, he's let me get away with stuff.
he definitely did it on purpose.
Like, cause I not to get distracted, but I peed in the bed when I was a kid, so my mother wouldn't want me to drink after a certain time. So I would go to I'll be thirsty though. I'll go to the bathroom. I turn the bathroom, the tub faucet on, and I'll drink the water. So one time he came to the bathroom, and he saw me drinking it. I was like, sorry. He was like, go ahead.
Man, live.
But
Gotta live.
yeah, as we got older, I think him and my mother used to, butt heads a little bit. So he might not be able to come home some nights.
Mm-hmm.
Like his name was Terrell. She called him T. T, go somewhere. I don't want you in the house. So I remember at one point in time, and my mother also told me some of the details of this part. So at one point in time, he wasn't allowed to come home.
Right.
And he called my mother, and she said, he said, Yvette, my insides is messed up. I'm getting sick. It's really tough. And my mother told him, go to the doctor. Go to the hospital, get help. And he said, it's too late. I don't think they could do anything. My mother said, if you believe in God, you trust in God, you'll get better. So he ended up going to the hospital. I think they took me to see him once or twice, and I vaguely remember the hospital room. It's kind of like it was big to me. I was 9 years old. I remember him sitting on the bed. I remember him being he was a dark-skinned man, but he was darker than
he was
usual.
Yeah.
And it was heart problems, so it might have made sense. And he didn't make it. He didn't make it. He was gone maybe a couple weeks later. I remember my mother coming home and telling me, and it took me as a shock. I remember when she told me it took me as a shock, but I kind of seeped. I was leaning against the wall, kind of seeped down, and she hugged me, and she was talking to me about, I can't remember, probably even heard what she said. I remember the same later that night, my sister came home. I have two sisters. My older sister came home, and when she told her, she sat her on her lap.
Yeah.
She hugged her, grabbed both her wrists, and she's like, what happened? What happened? And then she tells her, and she just starts to rip and run away. Somehow my mother knew that was going to be her reaction.
She knows her children. Yeah.
But for a long time, I remember I used to write poetry. My mother asked me, do you want to write something? Like, I'm sure you're sad. Maybe you can't communicate your feelings. You want to write something. So I wrote something. I remember, I have a picture of it somewhere. I remember I wrote, I was writing to God. It was like, I know my father's a good person. I know he drank a lot, but he was a good person. But as I got older, I felt the same way.
Yeah.
I was like, and then I started realizing what broke is as I get older, because I go to my friend's house, and their fridge is more full than mine.
Come on. How y'all got that?
And like, we were, I hate to say broke, because I know how my mother worked, but we didn't have it. I remember chasing roaches in the kitchen.
Come
like
on.
it was a game.
Like, it was a game.
But for a long time, up until a couple years ago, I had some resentment. I felt the same as a man. It's tough out here. My mother's amazing. You got 4 kids. How couldn't you take care of yourself? Why couldn't you put the bottle down? Why couldn't you? Did you not love us enough to take care of yourself, to be there for us?
Yeah.
And then I learned more about it. I have experiences with the healthcare system, and it's not great. It's not kind to us. So if he had to visit the hospital, and he didn't have like a real secure job. If he had to visit the hospital, you don't have insurance. You know what that bill's gonna look like.
And you said it was like monthly that he had.
He was monthly. He had to go. He's supposed to go to the doctor a month and get a shot or injection.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to ask my mother questions about it because
It's pain.
that was her.
Yeah.
She was with him for 20 years.
Ooh.
My brother's 10 years older than me, so she was with him, and he died when I was 9. So,
Wow.
um, it started to make more sense the experiences that Black people have at.
So then, how did you? What, knowing and feeling all of that? What has? And thank you so much for sharing that. I didn't, I didn't know that. I didn't know that
Yeah,
about you. Yeah. And
yeah.
I'm looking at your lady, and she is just going, "Wow." You see,
Mhm.
you're getting to learn some stuff,
Mhm.
right? Um, how how did it inform your developing coping mechanism for yourself? Because now I'm just like, oh man, daddy, I get it. I get
Yeah.
why it was so hard.
Yeah.
You know, it's a hard choice every day. I always tell my kids, like, there's moments in my life where crack was an option. It could have been.
Mhm.
If I knew how to buy crack, I probably would have, right?
Mhm.
But it was so much pain and so much confusion that I saw people walking in the world um, looking for escapes. But my anchor was always my children. Like I knew I had to be present no matter what was happening. I had to scramble and fight to make sure that I could stay present for them. But if I didn't have them as an anchor, I'm not sure where, like the pain would have taken me.
Yeah.
And so I figured out some coping mechanisms. But what are yours?
Um, I still believe that there's something that I haven't discovered yet because I believe people who succumb to crack or violence or crime, they love
Hmm.
their families too.
Of
They love
course.
their kids as
Of
well.
course. Of course.
But how easy it is, it's not
It's
actually hard
actually
to
not.
buy crack.
Well, for me, I was just like, I don't really know where the crack man is.
I
So
mean,
it wasn't. It's
I
gonna be hard.
mean,
It's gonna be hard for me.
I could point you in the
I'm
direction.
sure I still would have because I now I'm
Not
gonna
that
have.
I bought it,
I
but
swear to
there's
God, I would be like having a conversation with them that would not be conducive to my sales. Like, something. Tell me why are you doing this though?
in
That's it.
in certain communities you're probably 3 conversations away from getting some
Of
crack.
course, of course.
You know,
This community.
yeah,
Yeah,
we can go to
absolutely.
Myrtle easily.
Hmm. We ain't
Um,
got that. We ain't really got to go that far.
right,
Trust.
but
Yeah.
um, but my coping now and what happened in that space was spent a lot of time alone,
Hmm.
which fortunately I've just picked up reflection, like looking back at how the day went.
Hmm.
What did I like? If
Hmm.
I ate this food, if it made me feel good, remember that. If I ate this food and it tasted good, made me feel bad, remember that. Remember
Right.
that. You asked me when I got here, how did I sleep?
Right.
I slept well yesterday.
Yep.
What did I do before I went to sleep? I had some tea, listened to some music, listened to some podcasts.
Coping
Um,
mechanisms.
so it's sometimes it's as simple as listening to your body and watching the results.
Yep.
If I had a good night's rest, I had a good breakfast, and my energy felt good,
Hmm.
let me repeat that behavior.
Hmm.
If I read a book and um, I learned something from it and it helped me reflect on a situation I could have handled differently, let me do that
I
again.
love that.
If I come get a massage and my back stops hurting, this is a true
Let me
story.
do that again.
Let me
Yeah.
let me do that.
It's real simple.
Yeah.
But it only gets to be simple if you slow down in that space of reflection, right? So not slow down like, oh, I'm working so hard, but
Hmm.
slow down your thoughts, right? I think everybody's having all these stories about all these stories that they tell themselves based on what they've experienced, right? So you experience the loss of your father. You experience being broke. You experience going into other homes and realizing that, hey, you guys may have a little bit more
They had
than we had.
Inshore. I was like, what's
What's
Inshore?
insure?
It's like you could just drink that. You
Well,
don't have
and
to save
I
it.
mean, like I thought really like my uncles were rich because we would go to their house in Queens. They had a house in Queens.
Hmm.
We lived in Vanderveer Projects. It wasn't Vanderveer whatever.
Vanderbilt.
We lived in Vanderveer Projects
Rest in
for
peace,
a
Michael
year.
King.
Right, exactly. All right, and so I didn't realize that he was from there until I saw like I think someone posted something that it was like a video that was a vigil of there, and I
Hmm.
remember being so afraid living in Vanderveer Projects. Like my
Hmm.
mom used to she was working a full-time job, of course, and then she went to school, Pace University, and 9 o'clock she was coming home, like from the train station, which, for a 6-year-old, 9 o'clock seems like midnight, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm hearing gunshots going, and I know she has to walk to come home. And it was terrifying, but it was home, right? So by the time you came into our apartment, it was beautifully decorated, and there's plants all over the place, and incense burning and all of
Mm-hmm.
that. But outside of that door, it was a whole nother world, right? And then I would go to Queens to my uncle's house, and it was like, y'all got a yard and a dog and a they had a den. I didn't understand what a den
Mm.
was. It was like, so what do you do here? You just sit around and play games? I was like, how? Like,
Mm-hmm.
we have a 1 bedroom apartment, and it's 4 of us. And there's a bunk bed in the bedroom, and my mom and dad's bed is there next to us. And it's like you start understanding very early in life contrasts. Like, what you have is enough until you go out in the world and see that there's something more,
Yeah.
right? And so that could be moved as a negative, but it also could be moved as influence into how it is you want to lead your life.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I grew up in the 80s, right? And so by the time the 90s hit, I had seen in the 80s, I was like in high school. So crack had just happened in our community. And crack is a big thing in my life, right? Because it's like I've lost two brothers to gun violence. They all hustled on a certain level.
Mm-hmm.
I've lost a myriad of friends just being in high school. You just heard so and so got shot. And it didn't dawn on you that shot meant like you could die,
Yeah.
right? Until they died. And so when this insurgent of, I want to say it's like a scourge in our community that came in and it started taking people's parents and their mothers and so forth. It always made me feel like, how can I distance myself as far away from this as possible? And for me, it was, I just delved into books and reading and education and learning about spirituality. And I didn't really go to a lot of the parties because I had a curfew.
Mm-hmm.
Because my mom was like, yeah, you could go to the party, but you have to be home by 10. Excuse me? The
Mm-hmm.
party started at 10.
Party side at 10.
Right? So I stayed home. I didn't have all the money for the clothing, and I didn't want to boost. I didn't want to steal. I didn't want to
Yeah.
have sex with people to get the clothes. So I just stayed home, right?
Yeah.
I think that staying home made me start to really be okay with me, because there was things in the world that I really couldn't access and in the way that other people did. And so I had to really become very comfortable with me. And I didn't understand that's what I was doing until I became uncomfortable with me. And I had to go back to that feeling of comfortability and realizing that I'm the constant.
Mm-hmm.
I think what I hope, you know, for this conversation to really shed light on is that, and for anyone who's listening, is that none of us have all the answers. Like, there's no right answer. Like, I woke up this morning and, I read this particular book, and then all the light shined on all my problems.
Yeah.
It's a constant process. There's days where you start off and you feel like, yo, I got it. And then there's days where I feel like, the heck am I doing?
Yeah.
Like, and why are people asking me? Because I really don't know.
Yeah.
It's every day is a trial. But I want to ask something else that I'm really happy about. So you're engaged.
Mm-hmm.
Yay, yay,
Okay.
right? Who were you? Who were you 5 years ago? And would that man have been able to express the kind of love that he is expressing now?
Maybe. I've been manifesting love and marriage and a family for maybe 7, 8 years.
Why?
Um, I'm a mama's boy. I remember I remember at some point in time, some fight my mother and father was having. He'd be like, I'm gonna marry you, and she'd be like, yeah, you always say that, T. So that stuck in my head. The value of family,
Mm-hmm.
um, that image, that picture,
Yeah.
how my life would have been different with a father in the household, or seeing those images.
Mm-hmm.
I also had different experiences with relationships when I was younger. Like I met some really like great women at a
Right.
young age, and I
Right.
think that helped shape me, that I wasn't scorned the same way some other fellas might be at a young
Mhm.
age, where they feel like
Mhm.
you can't trust women, or they just want you
Mhm.
for your money. And I'm
Mhm. Mhm.
like some of the women I met, they were like like amazing,
And then you had your
amazing,
mother as an example.
right?
Right.
Amazing people, like
Mhm.
not just amazing partners or like they're just amazing people. And I'm like I want that. I've had a couple of friends when I was younger, and
Oh
my
man, that's so
experiences,
sweet.
relationships with them versus a great woman. Come on now,
Wow.
it doesn't compare like that feeling, that love. And I decided like I will risk grasping for that, trying to attain that at the sake of maybe getting my heart broken, or maybe getting
Mm.
played, or maybe somebody taking advantage of
How
me.
brave.
Yeah, I know.
That is so
But the
brave.
but the reward is so much greater.
Absolutely.
The reward is so much greater. And it's tough to think of all the people in the world. I have to find someone who likes me, that I like. We're attracted to each other. We're both available.
Right?
We're not toxic for each other.
Mhm.
We live in proximity of each other. If that's my style. Um, they don't have any major like burdens they're dealing with at the time where they can express their feelings of love towards you.
Which
That's
meant they did some work.
right.
Right.
But that is an anomaly, that we get to find people who we want to spend the rest of
True.
our lives
True.
with, or that
True.
we feel
True.
that we want to spend the rest of our lives with. But what's more important now than it was maybe 5 years ago is that when I met my fiance, I didn't have as much work to do on myself. So
Right.
if I meet someone great, we can have a great time amongst each other, because I'm not dealing with abandonment the way I was 5 years ago.
Ooh, come on, talk about that.
I'm not dealing with. I believe in monogamy even before the relationship begins, so
Mhm.
I don't have to like when we start
Mhm.
talking, tell three other girls like, look, I know you cool with just a weekly fling. That I don't have to have that conversation.
Right.
I don't have to struggle with temptation to step out of my relationship,
Ooh.
because I've been practicing monogamy before
For
we
a
even met.
long time.
Before
Mhm.
we even met, so it was important that not only that it helps that she's amazing, it helps that I love her, she loves me, it helps that I can trust her, but also I made a decision that I'm gonna make a
Right.
daily decision
Right.
to pour into this, to do what's best for us. Um, it's an immediate return of investment, because I feel good,
Yep.
I sleep good.
Yep.
Uh, she helps me, she supports me, she's there for me, she adds to my life. So it's easy. I would much rather that than having to have the unknown of where my heart is going to end up
Wow.
for
So
the
that's
rest of
not
my life.
thinking about shining a light on the part of this has been a long journey. Like you didn't just wake up and say, oh, this is
Yeah,
what I'm going to do. It's like
yeah.
again the progression of that self work
Mhm.
of really saying, well, here's what I want to experience. This is what I'm willing to do for myself. This is what I'm not accepting. This is what I will accept. Brought you to a space where you were able to find that anomaly, you
Yeah,
know.
and be ready for it.
Right.
When we first met, we spoke about marriage, because even woman I've dated before
Woo.
her, our first date, if I uh,
The first date,
the first date, I'm letting you know why I'm here.
come through.
I'm here. Look,
Come
I'm letting you
through.
know right now. Um, I want to get married.
Mm-hmm.
I want to have children.
Mm.
I'm not as interested in let's have a good time for 6 months and then figure it out. Then like I need to know,
Right.
or I want to feel like a woman at least has the capacity, that we have the capacity with each other together
Right.
to achieve that goal and
Okay.
work throughout this crazy life together with the kids and the family and our families combining and things like that. So um, I've I've been doing the work since a long time before I met her.
Okay. Okay. So, whew, family,
Family,
family.
family.
That wow. That just that's so good. That's
Yeah.
so. I just want to sit in that because I remember I've known Ade for, good Lord, I don't even know. I don't even know when I didn't know him. Um, it's over 30 years, I think, right? And we both were in separate relationships. But when we decided to come together, it was because we had both individually had done some growing, and you were not like grounded in some real actions about how you would take care of yourself and how you would put yourself first, you could get lost in that and it could become very confusing because it wasn't just our immediate family, it was like other parents, other mothers, other fathers that were also involved in the story. And so I think what I heard you say made me remember, you know, we both were dating other people, right? And I remember asking him, Ade is a man of, he's a man of a lot of words, but he's also a man of few words, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I wanted a fairy tale. I want to be with you because you're so beautiful and I love you
Mm-hmm.
and you're the best thing ever and that's why I'm never going to talk to any other woman. And it was never that with him. He's like, I don't want the confusion anymore. I just
Mm-hmm.
want to be with someone who is, really ready to be just unbelievable in this world, who has good character, who is, taking care of themselves. It was always big for him. Like, are you taking care of yourself?
Yeah.
Like, if you're not eating correctly, if you're not correctly meaning fueling yourself,
Mm-hmm.
if you're not getting enough rest, if you're not exercising, I don't think Ade cares if you had on $1 million dress and, you know, like you, whatever. He's like, but can you run
Can you
if something happens? Can you
can
can
you
you
t-
pick up something? Can
can you
you
tell the story where he knew you wasn't drinking water
when he, oh my god, there's so many stories like that.
when
Which one?
he touched your lips?
Oh man, I can't remember that particular
I
story.
could tell it.
Yeah, go ahead, tell it.
I think y'all was just getting ready for bed.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah,
You
yeah,
want to tell it?
yeah. No, no, it's that happens often,
But
right?
he's getting ready for
Yeah,
bed, and he just reached over. He just, if you're listening, he just touched her lips, and he was like, "You're not drinking enough water."
and he gets up and he gets the water. Like so, even this morning, right? Like I last about maybe 10 days ago, about 2 weeks ago actually, I started this detox of sugar, right? And he's really supportive of anything that is around my health. And so but he goes to the extreme, Lord.
Mm-hmm.
He does. So like I'm like, okay, I'm not eating sugar anymore. I'm taking it out of my diet. I'm changing some things. No more rice, no more whatever, right? And so he's making sea moss and fresh almond milk in
Mm.
the kitchen with no maple syrup, no
Mm.
nothing. And
Mm.
he's like, here, drink this. And I'm exercising on the floor. He's like, you ready? I'm like, I mean, I guess, right? So
Mm-hmm.
the other day he blended up oregano. And he's like, this is going to be good. I said, I don't think it's going to be good, man. I really don't. I don't think, this is the one that I don't think is going to be good. Rondell, thank you. Thank you for sharing some tea with me
Mm-hmm.
and some, I feel like I know you even more. And I'm sure what we've spoken about is going to light up some people's hearts.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you so much.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Amen.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Love you.
Love you too, man. All right. We did it.
One.
We're amazing. One down. 5 more to go.